Hello and welcome back to Skypothesis. For this week's build, we are excited to dive into the mysterious and alien land of the Dunmer. We've drawn inspiration from a variety of sources in the world of fantasy entertainment to create a fresh and unique experience for vanilla Skyrim. We created this channel to share the ideas that have helped us reach a deeper roleplay experience, and we consider these videos a success if we've shared at least one thing that you might not have considered before. So without further ado, let's dive into our latest character, the Reaver. Hailing from the deep ashlands of Morrowind, the Reaver is a skilled bounty hunter with a rough past. He always brings the right tools for the job, but is capable of adapting to challenges on the fly. He leaves no room for mistakes. When he is prepared with the right elemental spells and poisons, he absolutely dominates the battlefield. This is definitely one of the strongest and most well-rounded characters that we have made. The Reaver's story begins in the ashlands of Morrowind. He was taken in by mercenaries as a child and never knew his parents. He was tolerated if he kept up on his duties around the camps, but nothing was ever guaranteed living amongst the roughest characters of the ashlands. Because of this, the Reaver grew up with a guarded and untrusting personality. Nothing is ever free there, and nobody offers a helping hand without expecting something in return. Gangs in the ashlands rarely last, as splinter groups form, eruptions from Red Mountain force relocation, and entrepreneuring members take their leave as soon as they find more promising prospects. The Reaver's clan were fortunately less bloodthirsty than others, and more interested in just making money and surviving. Because of this, they lasted much longer than the average band of raiders. His clan leader had a fondness for magic and taught the members basic spells and potion making to aid in their mercenary contracts. They were successful for a time, but nothing is ever permanent in the shifting ash of Morrowind. Work became harder to find. What few jobs were still available were highly squabbled over, and the work became more and more dangerous. They delved into Dwemer ruins, killed dangerous beasts for rare alchemical ingredients, and escorted explorers in search of ancient relics buried beneath the ash. With the passing of time, fewer and fewer Dunmer strayed from the safer and more civilized cities of Morrowind, and his mercenary group realized they could not afford to continue taking jobs together. The rough circumstances forced them to wander or change lifestyles. The Reaver chose to wander. His first stop was Skyrim, where he planned to take advantage of the opportunities in a war-torn country, but instead he found himself thrown right in the middle of a conflict he didn't want anything to do with. He wandered into an ambush and was taken to Helgen as a prisoner of war. After fleeing Helgen, his life actually begins to change for the better. He is immediately given work by a Jarl, the highest authority in the land. When he discovers his identity as the Dragonborn, he looks inward at himself for the first time in his life, and begins to see more than just a blade for hire. All his life, he focused on what was right in front of him and never knew where his next meal was going to come from. For the Reaver, Skyrim is a land of rebirth and self-actualization, a place where he has a chance to begin again, and for the very first time, fight for something bigger than himself. For the roleplay, it would make sense for the Reaver to prioritize the main quest and Dragonborn DLC. He embraces his role as Dragonborn and travels to Solstheim, where he acquires his new home, Severin Manor. He will spend a lot of time traveling between Windhelm and Ravenrock, and he gets to know the Grey Quarter very well. It's his primary stop for selling loot and picking up rumors and bounty quests. He sympathizes with the oppressed Dunmer of Windhelm and grows annoyed with the Nord's dismissal of his kin. He knows firsthand how hard it is for refugees to start a new life, so he joins the Imperial Legion in an effort to fight for a Skyrim that's more welcoming to all different races. Not many generations ago, the Jarls of Skyrim warmly welcomed the Dunmer refugees into their land. All of that has changed with Ulfric's uprising, but he has hope that a Legion victory will secure a brighter future for his people. He will stop in the Retching Netch in Ravenrock and recruit a bounty hunter acquaintance from his old life, Teldrin Sero. Teldrin is one of the best followers in the game, and he synergizes well with the Reaver. He uses fire magic, which will be super useful against enemies you've marked with weakness to magic poisons. His sarcastic comments are a welcome addition as well. For side quests, there aren't a lot of great bounty hunting quest lines that fit the vibe of this character in Skyrim. While it would make sense thematically for him to join some sort of fighters guild, the companions are not a good fit for him. Instead, he freelances bounty hunting and picks up random quests in his travels. Becoming Thane of Every Hold does provide a decently long, unofficial questline full of objectives befitting a skilled bounty hunter. At the end of the day, he is a neutral good character who is a free spirit and believes that what you earn has to be fought for. You have the flexibility to pursue any questline you feel would fit this character. In last week's build, we explored the synergy between alchemy and destruction, and we've taken that concept a step further with this guy. Instead of front-loading the damage of destruction, we will be applying weakness to magic poisons that amp up the damage over time done by Elemental Cloak spells. His playstyle is all about pummeling down enemies in close quarters. He's super tanky, and it's incredibly satisfying watching that enemy health bar just melt in the presence of your Elemental Cloaks. He will switch between different cloak spells according to the weaknesses of his foes. Now let's discuss creating the character. The Reaver dual wields 2 wicked forsworn swords. The rugged and sharp bone serrations look like something a bandit of the Ashlands would craft using only scavenged materials. The Reaver wears a full set of chitin heavy armor. There are 2 useful enchanted pieces at the end of the quest served cold. Remember to pick up the chitin heavy gauntlets of Fortify one-handed and the chitin heavy chest piece of Fortify heavy armor. This armor set is often overlooked, but we absolutely love its alien aesthetic. We can totally imagine a Star Wars-style bounty hunter strolling down a dangerous street decked out in this gear. It's pretty rare for us to use a matching set of armor due to our love of finding cool combos, but the full chitin set is perfect both functionally and aesthetically. For auxiliary gear, the best options are the Galdur amulet and a ring of Fortify destruction. For alchemy, he will make a variety of potions and poisons to augment his elemental damage in combat. 2 in particular make up the backbone of this build. Poison of Weakness to Poison, made from Deathbell and Bleeding Crown, and Poison of Weakness to Magic, made from Jazzbay Grapes and Scaly Photolita. In most combat scenarios, he will apply Weakness to Poison on one sword and Weakness to Magic on the other. Dual-wield power attacks will rapidly apply both to enemies. These ingredients are easy to amass in your garden at Lakeview Manor, so stock up on as many as you can. He will also make a few specialty poisons that include slightly rarer ingredients to occasionally swap in against tougher enemies. The first of these is Immolating Poison, which applies Weakness to Poison, Slow, and Weakness to Fire. This is made from Deathbell, Bleeding Crown, and Burnt Sprig and Wood. This is used occasionally on really tough enemies in tandem with your fire skills. Next is Withering Poison, which applies Weakness to Poison and Ravaged Stamina. This is made from Deathbell, Bleeding Crown, and Bone Meal. Combine this with Frost Cloak to quickly sap warriors of their stamina, and their ability to use power attacks. Finally, we have Siphoning Poison, which applies Weakness to Poison and Damage Magicka. This is made with Eye of Sabercat, Charis Eggs, and Bleeding Crown. Combine this with Stormcloak to quickly sap mages of their magicka. Before casting a cloak spell, he will also use a beneficial potion called Spark of Life, which is a Fortify Health and Fortify Destruction potion made from wheat, nightshade, and glowing mushroom. He learned this on his travels after a chance encounter with a strange Argonian wizard. Now for spells and shouts. As mentioned, he will make frequent use of Elemental Cloak destruction spells and use defensive alteration flesh spells. The Dark Elf racial ability Ancestor's Wrath is nice to have on hand if you ever find yourself out of magicka and in need of your elemental damaging cloaks. For shouts, he will use the various elemental damage shouts including Fire Breath, Frost Breath, and Storm Call. He will also use Whirlwind Sprint for mobility, Elemental Fury for rapid power attacks, and will rely on Dragon Rend to bring down dragons into melee range. His skill trees are spread pretty thin, so we do not have the flexibility to add perks to Conjuration for Elemental Atronachs. Instead, we will be using the Atronach Forge to make Conjure Atronach spell scrolls. To make these, you will need to always pick up fire, frost, and void salts, charcoal, and rolls of paper. There's a bunch of paper in Sunderstone Gorge, so when you come here to get the Fire Breath shout, remember to loot the shelves at the end of the dungeon. Now moving on to the Reaver's stats and perk spread. We leveled with a ratio of about 1 magicka, 2 health, and 1 stamina. For the Standing Stone, there's just no better option than the Atronach Stone. When combined with the Atronach perk on the Alteration tree, this is another character that will benefit from reaching 80% spell absorption. By the time you hit level 40, you will want to take the following perks. While the Reaver may be spread a bit thin in lower levels, he really picks up speed around level 20 and becomes unstoppable. In heavy armor, you will take 1 perk in Juggernaut, Fists of Steel, Cushioned, Conditioning, Well-Fitted, Tower of Strength, and Matching Set. Priority should be on getting the Conditioning perk, which will make a huge impact on his highly mobile playstyle. Fists of Steel will give you the upper hand when you get into tavern brawls with the local Nords. In Destruction, take the Novice through Adept perks, Destruction Dual Casting, 2 perks in Augmented Flames, 2 in Augmented Frost, and 2 in Augmented Shock. As your power grows, so will the rate that your opponents melt at. Remember to choose your elements wisely depending on the battle. In One-Handed, you will take 1 perk in Armsman, Fighting Stance, 2 in Dual Fury, and Dual Savagery. In Alteration, you will take the Novice through Expert perks, 3 perks in Magic Resistance, and Atronach. The spell absorption from this perk works wonders for this build. Finally, in Alchemy, take all 5 in Alchemist, Physician, Benefactor, Poisoner, and Concentrated Poison. If you plan to play past level 40, these skill trees would all benefit from additional perks, especially One-Handed and Heavy Armor. Keep in mind that we picked level 40 to show a checkpoint rather than an optimized and final perk spread. We normally play on Adept or Expert, but this guy is strong enough to play on Master without too much change. If you plan to play on higher difficulties, we would also recommend adding Smithing to get the Steel, Elven, and Advanced Armors perks so you can upgrade your gear. He is all about outlasting enemies while grinding them down with damage over time. It can be a bit slower, but extremely satisfying. And now moving on to the bread and butter of every build, the special moves. For the Reaver, we first have Noxious Fury, which is the combination of the Elemental Fury Shout, followed up by dual-wield power attacks with Poison of Weakness to Poison on one blade, and Poison of Weakness to Magic on the other. Use this move to stun lock and rapidly apply your poisons on enemies. The next 3 special moves are the elemental forms he will use depending on his enemies. First, we have Aspect of Fire, which is the combination of Immolating Poison, Flame Cloak, Fire Breath, and either Sunflare or Scroll of Firestorm. This is the ultimate form he can use when fighting general enemies and enemies weak to fire. Next is Aspect of Ice, which is the Withering Poison, Frost Cloak, Frost Breath, and North Wind or Scroll of Blizzard. This is the peak of destructive ice power to use against enemies weak to frost, particularly melee warriors. Finally, we have Aspect of Storms, which is the Siphoning Poison, Storm Cloak, and Storm Call. Storm Call is probably our favorite shout. It's just so ridiculous and completely changes the battlefield in your favor. Use this form against dragons and mages. And with that, we are ready to wrap up the Reaver. On a recent playthrough, we noticed that the Reavers of Solstheim had a high number of heavy armored battle mages in their ranks, and thought that could make the foundation of an interesting character. If you are looking for a fresh feeling playthrough, it felt very different playing a character that focused on inversely scaling up damage over time with alchemy. We hope you've enjoyed the journey so far, and that you'll stick around for more builds. If you like what we do, remember to like and subscribe to keep the magic of Skyrim alive. We'll see you next week, right here on Skypothesis.